the Russian Far East, near Russia's border with China and North Korea, lies a cave known in Russian as Chertovy Vorota, which translates to the Devil's Gate. Beyond its eerie name, Devil's Gate Cave is home to one of the most fascinating Neolithic sites in the Far East. Thousands of years ago, hunter-gatherer fishers lived there and manufactured pottery, tools, ornaments, and textiles. And, amazingly, archaeologists have actually found the remains of ancient humans within the cave as well. But when archaeogeneticists analyzed their DNA, what they found was completely unexpected. I'm Madam Archaeologist, your go-to informant on everything archaeology, and in this episode, I want to introduce you to the site of Devil's Gate Cave and go over what archaeogeneticists have discovered about the genetic ancestry of the Neolithic individuals buried within it, and the modern population that is genetically most similar to the group from Devil's Gate. How Devil's Gate Cave came to acquire its ominous name is, unfortunately, not well documented, and it leaves one wondering whether it's related to folklore and local legends, to geological features, or maybe a mix of both. The cave's imposing entrance could have easily been seen as a gateway to another world, and one Russian source states that the museum staff guiding hikes in the area have suggested that the name Devil could have come from the surrounding landscape, with nearby cliff peaks resembling the heads of devils with horns. Regardless, today, Devil's Gate holds important archaeological significance, with archaeologists having found, among various things, carbonized wood that is evidence of a former wooden structure that burnt down, likely a dwelling that covered an area of roughly 45 square meters, tools made from stone and bone, pottery, including clay vessels and potsherds, bone and shell ornaments, the incomplete skeletal remains of 7 humans, and the oldest surviving textiles discovered in East Asia to date. These carbonized ropes, nets, and mats are roughly 9,000 years old. The human remains recovered from the cave, however, are younger. These individuals lived and died around 7,700 or 7,600 years ago. The site falls within the region's Neolithic period, which in Siberia and the Russian Far East begins with the introduction of pottery. In terms of subsistence strategies, the Devil's Gate individuals were hunter-gatherer fishers, with paleodietary studies suggesting that about 25% of their protein came from marine sources, such as salmon. When archaeogeneticists analyzed DNA from a couple of the Devil's Gate individuals, they were struck by surprise. The ancestry of the Devil's Gate group was, previously, completely unknown to them. This ancestry is now known as Ancient Northeast Asian Ancestry. You may see it abbreviated as ANA ancestry, or sometimes called Amur ancestry. Since the pivotal study on Devil's Gate, ANA or ANA-related ancestry has been detected, to varying proportions, in further ancient samples, from the Russian Far East and Siberia, Mongolia, and China, for example. The modern population that is genetically closest to Devil's Gate is the Ulchi, who are native to the Russian Far East, specifically the Amur Basin region, and most of the Ulch people actually live fairly close to Devil's Gate Cave, in the Ulchsky district of Khabarovsky Krai. And what's very interesting is that the Ulchi derive at least most of their ancestry from that seen in the Devil's Gate individuals. You can also see on this PCA plot that the Devil's Gate individuals actually fall within the modern genetic diversity of people from the Amur Basin. These populations are represented by the brown dots. PCA is a good tool for visualizing relationships between populations, a good starting place in population-level studies. There's also a statistical test that archaeogeneticists can employ called Outgroup F3, and what this does is it measures the amount of shared genetic drift between two populations in relation to an outgroup. In simpler terms, it was used to find out which population or populations shared the highest genetic affinity with the Devil's Gate individuals. Using Outgroup F3, the researchers found that out of all the modern populations they tested, those geographically close to the cave were genetically the closest to Devil's Gate, a good match with the PCA results. And, as I mentioned earlier, the closest of all these populations was the Ulchi. Here, as you can see, the darker the red, the closer the population is genetically to Devil's Gate. This is another way of visualizing the data. We've got the 15 modern populations that share the most genetic drift with the 2 Devil's Gate samples. You can see that the most similar population in both cases is the Ulchi. These results are very interesting because they suggest that there has been a high level of genetic continuity in the wider region for at least the last 7,700 years. A more recent study actually pushes this further back, suggesting that the ancestry seen in Devil's Gate has been present in the region for at least 14,000 years. We have haplogroups from the Devil's Gate group as well. I discuss haplogroups in more detail in other episodes, for example in my video on 45,000-year-old human DNA, but the important thing to know here is that there are two types of haplogroups: mitochondrial, which traces your direct maternal line, and Y-chromosomal, which traces the direct paternal line and can only be tested in males. Everyone who shares a haplogroup shares a direct maternal or paternal ancestor. We have information on the haplogroups of the Devil's Gate individuals from two papers, the pivotal study and a later study from 2019. We only have one Y-chromosomal haplogroup, C2b, while the mitochondrial haplogroups belong to the D4 lineage, with some specifically placed into the D4M sublineage. Sublineages of Y haplogroup C and mitochondrial haplogroup D are found in Eastern Eurasia today, and what's particularly interesting is that sublineages of C2b and D4 have been detected in the Ulchi as well, so maybe some of the individuals from Devil's Gate were their direct ancestors. Beyond its ominous name, Devil's Gate Cave has been quite fruitful for archaeologists. We have a Neolithic site complete with the region's oldest known textiles, and we have human remains whose DNA has revealed a brand new lineage that has added greatly to our understanding of Eastern Eurasia's genetic history. As usual, if you have any thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. Subscribe for more cool content by our go-to informants on everything archaeology, Madam Archaeologist.